I was just a girl when everything in my life shifted. One minute things were normal, and the next they weren't. My little brother, Isaac, and I used to be inseparable. We shared everything, from secrets to dreams, and we could always count on each other. But when our mother passed away, it felt like a part of me had disappeared with her. Her last words stayed with me. If ever you feel hungry or lost, the forest will help you. It will give you what you need. At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. How could a forest give us anything? But I promised her I'd remember. After Mom was gone, everything got harder. Our dad remarried, and his new wife, Marissa, wasn't exactly what I'd call kind. She barely seemed to notice Isaac and me except when we were in her way. "Go outside, out of my sight," she'd yell, "and don't come back until you've found something to eat." I remember Isaac looking at me with those big, sad eyes, his stomach growling. "I'm hungry, Clara," he'd whisper. I didn't know what to do. We were just kids. But then I remembered what Mom had said about the forest. The forest was always there, right at the edge of our backyard. Tall trees, thick with leaves, their branches stretching out like arms, ready to hold us. It was a little creepy at night, but in the daytime there was something peaceful about it. One afternoon, with nothing else to do and Isaac's hunger growing worse, I grabbed his hand and led him toward the woods. And that's when we saw her, a cow, standing in the middle of the trees. I couldn't believe my eyes. A cow? In the forest? It didn't make sense, but something about it felt right. The cow looked at us with eyes that were calm and gentle. We stepped closer, and to our surprise, it didn't run away. Instead, it stood still as though waiting for us. Isaac and I looked at each other, not sure what to do. But when I reached out to pet the cow, it nudged me gently with its head as if inviting me to do something. Then, out of nowhere, the cow started giving us milk, just like that. I looked at Isaac, my mouth hanging open. "Is this real?" I asked, my voice trembling. Isaac nodded slowly as if unsure what to think, but I could tell he was relieved. Every day after that we returned to the cow, and she always seemed to be there, waiting for us. The milk was enough to fill our stomachs, and for the first time in weeks I didn't feel like I was starving. We kept it a secret. It was ours, just Isaac's and mine. I didn't want anyone to know, especially Marissa, because I knew she'd take the cow for herself. And as much as I hated her, I hated the thought of being without that cow even more. Marissa wasn't stupid. She wasn't the kind of woman who let anything slip by her, no matter how well we tried to hide it. Every day she'd give us chores that kept us busy, as if she knew something was off. I didn't know if she was just suspicious or if she was actually watching us. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was waiting for us to slip up. One afternoon, when Isaac and I were making our way to the forest to visit the cow, I spotted her standing by the back door, her hands on her hips. I stopped dead in my tracks, my heart skipping a beat. Isaac didn't notice right away and kept walking, but I pulled him back, pressing my finger to my lips. "What's wrong?" Isaac whispered. "I think she saw us," I murmured. "We need to be careful." We stepped back into the shadows of the garden, trying to stay hidden. Marissa didn't seem to be paying attention, but I had learned by now that her silence always meant trouble. It wasn't long before she turned sharply and glanced in our direction, eyes narrowing. My stomach dropped. She must have known something was wrong. With a sharp breath, she headed into the house. I turned to Isaac, my mind racing. "We have to go now." Isaac didn't argue. He trusted me, and he followed closely behind as we headed for the forest. The trees were thick with their usual mystery, the smell of damp leaves heavy in the air. The sound of birds calling overhead was almost comforting, but I couldn't shake the dread that clung to me like a second skin. As we moved deeper into the woods, I noticed Isaac's steps slowing, as if he too could sense something was off. But just as I was about to speak, we heard a rustling behind us. It was too quiet to be the wind, too controlled to be just an animal. I spun around, my breath caught in my throat. There, standing a few feet away, was Marissa. She was glaring at us, arms folded across her chest, her face a mixture of anger and disbelief. Her eyes were burning and her lips twisted into something between a sneer and a smile, something that made my skin crawl. "I knew it," she said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "I knew you were hiding something. What is this? You think you can keep this a secret from me?" Isaac stiffened beside me, his small hand clutching mine, but I could feel the terror in his grip. My stomach churned. "Marissa, it's nothing," I said quickly, trying to cover up the panic in my voice. "We're just walking." But she didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. "Walking? Is that all you two do all day? Wander into the woods?" Her voice was low and mocking. "I've been watching you." I felt my throat tighten. I didn't know how much she had seen or how much she suspected, but she was smart, too smart to be tricked, and she wasn't the type to let things go. "Where's the cow?" she demanded suddenly, her voice sharp and accusing. My heart slammed in my chest. I hadn't expected her to say that so directly, but it was like she already knew. How? We just found it," I stammered. "It's just a random animal. It doesn't belong to anyone. We didn't—" "Stop lying," Marissa interrupted, her face now twisted in frustration. "I saw the way you two look at it, like it's yours. You've been hiding it from me, haven't you?" Before I could respond, Marissa pushed past us, her eyes scanning the trees. She was relentless. "Where is it? Tell me now." I wanted to stop her, to make her leave, but I couldn't find the words. Marissa was already halfway toward the clearing where we'd left the cow, and I was frozen in place, desperate to keep her away from it. Isaac tugged on my sleeve, his voice barely above a whisper. "Clara, what do we do now?" I looked at him, my mind racing. There was no way we could keep the cow a secret anymore. Marissa was too close, and if she found out about it, I didn't even want to think about it. "I don't know," I whispered back, "but we can't let her take it." Just as I said that, Marissa reached the clearing. I could see her step carefully into the center of it, eyes scanning every inch of the area. She walked right up to the cow and paused, staring at it for a long moment. For a second, everything felt like it was frozen in time. The cow stood perfectly still, just as it always did, but there was something about its presence that felt even more intense now, like it knew this moment was coming. I watched Marissa's face shift from confusion to disbelief. She blinked, unsure of what she was seeing. The cow hadn't run off, hadn't disappeared into the trees like any normal animal would. It was just standing there calmly, as if it belonged there, as if it had always been there. I swallowed hard, waiting for her reaction. "What is this?" Marissa asked, her voice trembling with something I couldn't quite place. "Where did this come from?" I told you," I said quietly. "It's not ours. It just showed up. We didn't ask for it." But I could see the wheels turning in her mind, the greedy spark lighting up in her eyes. She didn't care where it came from. All she saw was food. She saw a way to get something for herself. "I'm taking it," she said firmly, her voice leaving no room for argument. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but the words wouldn't come. Isaac was gripping my arm now, his small fingers digging into my skin. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but there was nothing I could do. Marissa was already moving toward the cow, reaching for the rope she had brought to tie it up. "Don't!" I finally shouted, stepping forward. "It's not yours!" She turned on me, her face full of fury. "You don't get to tell me what's mine and what's not. This is mine now." And with that, she yanked the rope around the cow's neck, pulling it sharply. "What?" I asked, confused. "We can't just—" "You're going to bring it to me," she said, her voice cold. "Now." Isaac and I looked at each other, fear rising in my chest. We didn't want to do it, but I knew there was no way out. We went back into the woods, with the cow following us the whole way. But when we brought it back to the house, things started to feel wrong. I could see the greed in Marissa's eyes as she demanded the cow for herself. "I need it," she said, "for the baby. I'll keep it for food." "We can't just give it to you," I said, almost pleading. "It's not ours to give." But she didn't listen. She took a knife from the kitchen and handed it to our father. My heart sank. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. "Do it," she ordered. And that's when something strange happened. When the knife touched the cow's skin, it didn't react like it should have. The cow didn't flinch. It didn't die. It just stood there looking at us like nothing was wrong. Isaac and I both froze. How could this be happening? "If you won't kill it," Marissa said, "I'll kill you both." I looked at Isaac, his eyes wide with fear. My heart was pounding in my chest. What was going on? Then I whispered, "Let it die." And as soon as I said it, the cow collapsed, its body going limp in an instant. But even after it fell, it didn't feel like the end. It was like the cow was still there in some way, watching us. But Marissa wasn't done. She tried to skin the cow, but the skin wouldn't come off. It was as if it was stuck, frozen to the flesh. "Why won't it come off?" she shouted in frustration. "I don't know," I whispered. "Let it come off." And to my shock, the skin peeled away, but slowly and carefully, almost like it was doing it on its own. Then Marissa tried to cook the meat, but the fire wouldn't touch it. No matter how hard she tried, the flames couldn't cook it. "I'll kill you both if this doesn't work," she yelled. I looked at Isaac, who was shaking. And just like that, the meat started to cook. It sizzled, filling the air with a strange scent. But when Marissa tried to move the pot, it wouldn't budge. No matter how hard she pulled, it stayed stuck to the fire. "I'll kill you if you don't move it," she screamed. Isaac looked at me and I couldn't help but whisper, "Let it move." And suddenly the pot slid off the fire like someone had pushed it. After that, it felt like everything changed. The forest, the cow, everything. I knew it was time to leave. Isaac and I made a plan to run away that night. We left without looking back, into the forest once again, but this time we couldn't find each other. Somehow, we got separated. Years passed. I became stronger, learned to live by myself, and never forgot the forest. And then, one day, I met Arya, a girl who was kind and strong. We started meeting in secret, and I fell in love with her. But I couldn't keep my secret forever. One day, the village chief called everyone together. Arya stood up and spoke. "This is the man who's been fighting for us," she said, her voice clear. "I love him, and I want to marry him." At first the chief was angry, but then something amazing happened. His head started to swell, growing bigger and bigger. Arya spoke again, calm as ever. "If you let us marry, your head will shrink back." And just like that, the chief's head returned to normal, and everything was peaceful again. Though it wasn't how I expected things to turn out, I had survived and I had found love. The forest stayed in my heart, always waiting for me when I needed it most.